Gulf of Oman was quiet in the way only open ocean can be. At 2:17 a.m. on March 1st, 2026, the calm broke inside the Combat Information Center of a U.S. Navy destroyer, guarding the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln. A short metallic ping cut through the room as radar operators stared at their displays. Seconds later, another signal followed. What had been a clean, empty radar scope suddenly filled with movement. One contact became 10. 10 became dozens. Within half a minute, the screen looked like a storm of light. The drone swarm begins. Iran's saturation strategy. Nobody panicked. No one shouted. The men and women inside that room had trained for this exact moment for years. But they all understood what the data meant. Something massive had just begun. The Aegis combat system instantly started counting and categorizing targets. 11 contacts turned into 40. 40 turned into more than 100. The software began processing hundreds of simultaneous tracks, calculating altitude, speed, direction, and potential threat level in fractions of a second. From the northern edge of the Gulf of Oman, a wave of objects was moving toward the carrier strike group. This was not a single missile attack. It was a saturation strike. On the tactical display, the incoming objects formed a red tide pushing south toward the American fleet. Some flew low and slow, barely above the waterline. Others were higher, moving faster. The sky over the strike group was suddenly crowded with problems, each one demanding attention before it reached lethal distance. At the center of that formation sailed the USS Abraham Lincoln, one of the most powerful warships ever built. The 104,000-ton nuclear aircraft carrier carried nearly 90 aircraft and more than 5,000 sailors. It was surrounded by cruisers and destroyers, armed with layers of defensive weapons, from long-range interceptors to rapid-fire guns designed to shred incoming threats. But even the most advanced naval shield has limits. Every interceptor missile launched costs millions of dollars and reduces the number available for the next threat. Modern naval warfare often becomes a brutal calculation of mathematics. If an enemy can launch enough cheap weapons at once, they might overwhelm even the strongest defense by forcing it to fire faster than it can think. The radar operators watching the screens understood that reality perfectly. Hundreds of miles to the north, Iranian planners understood it too. Near the Iranian port city of Bandar Abbas, a coastal facility operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps sat dark against the shoreline. There were no floodlights, no loud engines, no dramatic countdown. Only the quiet mechanical whine of propellers beginning to spin. One drone rolled out of a concealed launch bay and lifted into the air. Then another followed. Soon, dozens of Shahed-type drones were climbing into the night sky. These drones were not designed to be fast. They moved at little more than 100 miles per hour. But speed was never their purpose. Their strength was numbers and timing. Each drone had a carefully programmed flight path that would bring it to the edge of the American radar horizon at exactly the right moment. Iran did not necessarily expect these drones to sink a U.S. aircraft carrier. That would require something far more powerful. Instead, the swarm served a different role. It forced a choice on the defenders. Fire expensive interceptors at every incoming drone, or wait and risk letting a real weapon slip through. The drones spread out across the sky like mechanical birds, flying low enough to blend into radar clutter created by waves and atmospheric interference. Their goal was simple: create confusion. The missile trap, ballistic strike from the coast. Back on the American destroyer USS Stout, an Aegis weapons officer studied the display as the swarm approached. His finger hovered over the launch controls. The drones were still far enough away that firing now would waste precious interceptors. He made the decision to wait. For 14 long minutes, the American fleet held its fire. The radar picture grew more crowded with every passing second as the slow-moving drones crept closer. Inside Iranian command centers, that silence was interpreted as stress. From their perspective, the American defenses were already struggling to process the swarm. That was the moment Iran had been waiting for. 8 missile launchers erupted in coordinated bursts along the coast. Flames cut through the darkness as solid fuel rockets pushed anti-ship ballistic missiles into the sky. These were College Fars missiles, weapons specifically designed to hunt large naval targets like aircraft carriers. Within seconds, the missiles climbed high above the atmosphere on steep trajectories toward the strike group. Far above the fleet, an E-2D Hawkeye early warning aircraft detected the launches almost instantly. Its powerful radar and sensors fed targeting data across the fleet through secure digital networks. Every American ship in the area now saw the same threat picture. The situation had changed dramatically. The drone swarm was only the opening move. The real attack had just begun. Inside the USS Stout's Combat Information Center, 8 ballistic missile tracks appeared on the radar displays. They were climbing fast toward space before beginning their descent toward the fleet. The problem facing the defenders was brutal in its simplicity. The destroyer carried exactly 8 SM-3 interceptor missiles capable of destroying ballistic threats in the upper atmosphere. 8 interceptors for 8 incoming missiles. A perfect match with no room for error. If the destroyer launched all 8 interceptors now, and the drones continued closing in, the fleet might have nothing left to stop whatever came next. Electronic warfare. The Growler changes the equation. But the American commanders had prepared another layer of defense. High above the strike group, an EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft had been orbiting quietly since the beginning of the incident. For most of the engagement, it remained silent, blending into the electromagnetic noise of the battlefield. When the Iranian missiles activated their radar seekers to correct their course mid-flight, the Growler came alive. Instead of blasting powerful jamming signals across the entire spectrum, the aircraft transmitted carefully targeted interference on exactly the frequencies used by the missile guidance systems. The effect was immediate. 3 of the incoming missiles suddenly lost the radar updates needed to guide them toward the moving carrier. Without those corrections, they drifted off course and plunged harmlessly into the ocean. The radar display changed instantly. 8 threats had become 5. The destroyer wasted no time. 5 SM-3 interceptors launched in rapid succession, streaking upward through the atmosphere at incredible speeds. Unlike traditional missiles, these interceptors do not rely on explosive warheads. Instead, they destroy targets through pure kinetic force, slamming into them at hypersonic velocity. Within seconds, 5 bright flashes appeared high above the ocean as the interceptors collided with the incoming ballistic missiles. 5 targets vanished from the radar. But the battle was far from over. Close range, defense, fighters, and ship weapons engage. The drone swarm was still approaching the fleet, flying just above the waves. Fighters already patrolling above the strike group turned toward the incoming clusters. F/A-18 Super Hornets began launching air-to-air missiles at the nearest drones, while shipboard defenses activated. Rolling airframe missiles fired from launchers on the escorts. Close-in phalanx cannons spun to life, unleashing thousands of rounds per minute at any drone that slipped too close. One by one, the drones disappeared from the radar picture, splashing into the sea or exploding in the air. When the last drone was destroyed, the American ships still had missiles remaining in their magazines. The saturation attack had failed to exhaust their defenses. But Iran still had one final move prepared. Moments later, 4 hypersonic missiles blasted into the sky from hidden launch sites. Known as the Fatah 1, these weapons traveled at speeds exceeding Mach 13 and carried maneuverable warheads designed to strike naval targets with devastating force. Iranian commanders believed the American fleet had already spent most of its interceptors on the earlier waves. From their perspective, the sky above the carrier was now vulnerable. Inside the strike group command center, the radar operators watched 4 new tracks racing toward them. 3 SEM-3 interceptors remained. The commander made a difficult decision. 3 interceptors would target the 3 missiles most likely to strike the carrier directly. The 4th would have to be handled by the fleet's last line of defense. The final seconds. Phalanx versus a hypersonic missile. On the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln, a Phalanx close-in weapon system rotated upward toward the sky. Normally, the Phalanx is used against low-flying missiles or aircraft approaching the ship. It fires thousands of tungsten rounds per minute to create a wall of metal in the path of an incoming threat. But that night, it was being asked to do something extraordinary. High above the atmosphere, the 3 SM-3 interceptors collided with 3 of the hypersonic missiles. Brilliant flashes lit the night sky as the weapons destroyed each other at enormous speeds. 1 missile remained. As it descended through the atmosphere, aerodynamic drag slowed it slightly, but it was still moving at several times the speed of sound. The Phalanx system locked onto the target and opened fire. Instead of trying to destroy the entire missile, the computer targeted the small control fins at the rear of the weapon. Within a fraction of a second, hundreds of rounds struck the tail section. 2 fins shattered instantly. Without those stabilizing surfaces, the missile began to wobble violently. At hypersonic speeds, even a small imbalance becomes catastrophic. The weapon veered off course and slammed into the ocean just over 1,000 feet away from the carrier. A massive column of water erupted into the air as the warhead detonated beneath the surface. The shockwave rolled through the water and rattled the Lincoln like a giant bell. Windows on the bridge cracked. Sailors staggered to keep their balance. But the ship itself remained intact. The attack had failed. Chapter 7. The Counterstrike. America's rapid response. As dawn approached, the carrier continued moving through the Gulf of Oman at high speed. Flight crews calmly prepared aircraft for morning operations as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But the story was not finished. Hours later, the American fleet began its response. Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from multiple ships in the strike group, skimming low over the water toward Iranian military targets along the coast. At the same time, swarms of inexpensive drones entered Iranian airspace to draw out radar systems and expose air defense positions. Once those radars activated, American aircraft struck them with anti-radiation missiles, destroying key elements of the Iranian air defense network. With those defenses weakened, Shahed-type aircraft moved deeper into Iranian territory, targeting military infrastructure and command facilities with precision-guided weapons. Within hours, several key installations had been damaged or destroyed. By morning, satellite imagery showed smoke rising from naval bases and military complexes along the southern Iranian coast. The Strait of Hormuz remained open, and the USS Abraham Lincoln continued its patrol through the region, launching aircraft into the rising sun as if the night battle had been just another routine operation. For the sailors aboard the carrier and the escorts surrounding it, the message was clear. Modern naval warfare is not only about firepower. It is about timing, technology, coordination, and the ability to solve impossible equations in seconds. That night in the Gulf of Oman, those equations favored the defenders. But the margin was razor thin, and in the world of high-tech warfare, the next engagement could look very different. If this deep dive helped you see how modern military strategy really unfolds beyond the headlines, consider supporting the channel by liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications so you don't miss our next breakdown of the conflicts shaping the world.